Do you believe there is evidence that Jesus truly raised from the dead? Raised from the dead? That's a deep and important question, and one people have wrestled with for centuries. Historians generally agree on a few key points about Jesus. He was crucified under Roman rule. His followers very quickly came to believe that he had risen from the dead. Now, whether Jesus actually rose from the dead is where things split depending on your worldview. The resurrection is seen as a historical and supernatural event. The empty tomb. The sudden, bold transformation of Jesus' disciples. Claims of post-resurrection appearances to individuals and groups, as found in the Gospels and in 1 Corinthians 15. The growth of the early church despite persecution and death. For many, the strength of personal experience and the internal consistency of the Bible supports their faith in the resurrection. Skeptics argue the resurrection is a religious claim, not verifiable by historical methods. The disciples stole the body. Jesus didn't really die, a swoon theory. The stories are legendary or symbolic, not literal. The resurrection accounts contradict in some details, suggesting embellishment. But none of these theories fully explain why the early Christians were willing to die for their belief that Jesus rose again, especially when they would have known if it was a hoax. It depends on what you count as evidence. Believers see the data as pointing to a miracle. Non-believers interpret it naturally. Bottom line, it's not a question of no evidence, but rather how you interpret the evidence and whether you're open to the possibility of a supernatural explanation. Want to go deeper into the arguments from either side? Or hear what scholars like A.T. Wright or Bart Ehrman say about it? How do Christians debunk the naysayers? Oh, this is a good one, Fire. Christians have definitely built a strong case over the years to respond to skeptics of the resurrection. It's not just because the Bible says so, there are actually some thoughtful, evidence-based responses. Let's look at how Christians typically counter the main skeptical arguments. Christian response. Roman executioners were brutal professionals. They knew when someone was dead. Jesus was flogged, crucified, stabbed in the side, and wrapped in burial cloths. Surviving that, escaping the tomb, and convincing others he was risen? Not likely. The idea that a barely alive Jesus could inspire a resurrection faith movement is hard to swallow. 2. The disciples stole the body. Christian response. The disciples were scared, scattered, and hiding after Jesus' death. Why would they die for a lie they made up? People die for what they believe is true, not what they know is false. The tomb was guarded, and there would have been huge consequences for stealing the body. Christian response. Allegedly appeared to groups of people, e.g. 500 at once, according to Paul in 1 Corinthians 15. Hallucinations don't eat, talk, or have physical interaction, yet the Gospels record Jesus doing all those things after his resurrection. If it were hallucinations, the tomb would still have the body, and the authorities could have easily pointed to it. Christian response. Scholars agree that parts of 1 Corinthians 15 date to within 3 to 5 years of Jesus' death. The Gospels were written within the lifetime of eyewitnesses, people who could have challenged or corrected false claims. Women were the first witnesses in the Gospel accounts at a time when their testimony wasn't considered credible. That's an odd choice unless it really happened that way. The best explanation for the historical facts, the empty tomb, the resurrection appearances, and the transformation of the disciples, is that Jesus really did rise from the dead. requires a leap of faith, especially if you don't already believe in God. Want to dive into how specific scholars debate this stuff? Like right, attach, search, reason, voice. ChatGPT can make mistakes.